So with Deep Rock Galactic Survivor being out over a week now, and with me ploughing a good chunk of unhealthy time into the game to learn what works and doesn't work, I wanted to bring a video out about the artifacts of the game, discussing what the best ones to look out for are to really make or break a run, especially at those higher difficulties. Now in this list we'll discuss the top 5 artifacts, talk about what they do, and most importantly how to unlock them to gain access to their drops in future runs. Out of the grand total of 19 currently available drops, it's important to recognise which ones are to look out for and which ones are best to avoid. If that sounds good to you, then buckle up, don your mining gear, and let's get ready to rock. Now before we start, it's important we get an honourable mention out of the way, one that does technically meet the list, but even with almost 30 hours, I've still yet to unlock it, so get ready to be able to get on that grind. This one is requiring you to be able to spend 20,000 gold in game. Now the reason the pay-to-win console doesn't end up in the top 5 is my skepticism around its ability and how it drains your resources to put in the work. Now don't get me wrong, getting an easy 100% increase to damage just for owning a stockpile of gold is huge, with no negative effects to your movement or other attributes. It's pretty great. But this does hinder you in several ways, keeping this from being actually pay to win. Gold is an important resource in runs, contributing to rerolls of level up perks, healing between rounds, or even buying character specific upgrades like crit chance or movement speed in the round ending buy menu. It even contributes to another artifact, the gold tip bullet, which do also boost damage, just albeit to a lesser degree without costing you anything to use. The real worry around this is how fast the boost disappears, requiring 10 gold every 10 seconds to keep the buff going, else it does nothing and wastes an artifact slot, which instead could have housed something that has got always on function. This will also require you to go out of your way to farm for gold all mission long, potentially costing you a completed side objective or even funneling you into a bad position for the oncoming horde. Needless to say, the pay-to-win console does have a huge upside that will pay off if you can handle its heavy cost, but don't be too surprised if it lets you down at a crucial moment. With that out of the way, the rest of the list can be more easily unlocked and sooner, starting with the number 5 pick of the Popup Tripod. Unlocking this artifact is relatively simple to do on the lower difficulties, requiring a few runs to get that total of 15,000 kills while standing still. This can be done especially well with the Engineer, gaining access to LMG turrets that make light work of this challenge, especially once maxed out. The tripod grants the user a gradual stacking increase in reload speed and rate of fire, increasing both by 2% per stack, all the way to a total of 10 max stacks while standing still, giving the user a 20% boost into both stats at max. Now this can be insanely good for weapons that rely on their reload speeds to function at higher waves, including the Turret Engineer and Spin to Win SMG builds, which empty their clips especially fast. It can also work wonders for heavy gunners, granting faster speeds to their autocannons and minigun for massive damage, or even damage over time builds with faster uses of the flamethrower and sludge pumps. Now while this artifact isn't for every build, used in the right situation and with the right combination of artifacts later on this list, the behemoths on the last levels will never stand a chance or even get a single leap off at you. A simple increase to your whole arsenal's DPS, and all it requires is for you to take your hands off the keyboard. You can't say it gets easier than that. Now dropping in at number 4 is one of the more reliable damage increases in this game, and all it takes to do is to own and manage a single type of resource. Now while this is pretty good by itself, it does tend to shine with another artifact a little bit further on in this list, which we'll discuss when we get to it. The Nitrogenic Powder is a blue rarity artifact, making it a little easier to obtain each run and less reliant on your luck score to see it pop up. Unlocked by simply collecting the total of 20,000 Nitra over multiple runs, the powder offers a 0.5% increase to your crit chance per piece of Nitra on your character. And that's it. No real drawbacks, no negative side effects, just simple management of your Nitra to get the most out of this. Now while this doesn't directly increase your damage and DPS, it does increase your likelihood of hitting crit shots with all your weapons, allowing a more reliable way to increase your damage through other multipliers. In my experience, this opens up a lot more avenues to abuse with status effects, most notably the cryo grenade, as I've seen crits landed with this weapon instantly freeze groups of enemies in its radius, giving you a much needed respite each reload, making crowd control the best abuser of this powder. Fortunately for this artifact, Nitra is only used in the in-between rounds buy menu to obtain more weapon upgrades. This requires the user to balance their spending and their effectiveness in combat when deploying into the next level, whether that 15% damage nose is worth the drop in crit chance for the whole assortment of weapons you bought in is to be able to suffer as a result. For the low cost of reaching a global reload speed of 75% in a single run, you'll unlock the third best artifact on this list, the ammo rig. Now, one crucial detail to mention is that this unlocks from global reload speed, so any increases you gain from upgrades to specific weapons won't work here, so choose your upgrades wisely. That being said, there is a way to kind of cheese this out a little bit with help from the number 5 pick, as the tripod provides boost to global reload speed, so standing still to gain 10 stacks will give you 20% toward that total, along with your character upgrades when loading into the level. After unlocking and obtaining the ammo rig, you'll experience one of the biggest boosts to DPS to exist in the game, with no management needed, granting a whopping plus 50% increase of rate of fire to your whole arsenal at the cost of minus 15% movement speed. At base level weaponry, this results in an increase of 50% in your DPS, taking low damage rapid firing weapons to insane heights, and helping higher damaging weapons benefit from firing more often. Quick note with this is that as far as I can tell, this has no benefit to single use weaponry like grenades, as they rely on reload speeds to stock up ready for their next throw. Gunners with miniguns and autocannons will see a massive benefit, especially with this artifact, with construct engineers also especially happy to have the upsides of this, helping their LMG and flamethrower turrets put out insane DPS numbers. Now, while the ammo rig is a huge boost in DPS, it does have a bit of a downside that can't be overlooked, with that minus 15% move speed hindering you in some cases from getting away from hordes, or even deadlier a behemoth jump, potentially leading to a loss. Losing 15% by itself isn't usually the reason for that loss though, but when used in combination with other items that limit movement, it can start to add up and make you less mobile. By and large, the DPS increase of the ammo rig makes this a worthwhile grab whenever you see it in a supply pod, so let the lid fly and watch those swarms fall. We're into the top 2 artifacts in the game right now, and so far we've looked at some very influential picks, with all offering some form of DPS increase and making wiping out the aliens that much easier for you. With these top 2 picks though, the prior increases will look trivial at best. Starting with the runner-up, we have the Squint EEs. Now, these goggles provide a huge boost to both crit chance and crit damage at the cost of your global damage modifier, giving you a plus 30% crit chance, plus 100% crit damage, and sacrificing 30% of your global damage. Now, this was a confusing one to look at initially, as the true benefit of this only starts to shine as you increase your damage with abilities, as at base it's more of a hindrance and downgrade than it lets on, but the stronger you get in the run, the better this artifact gets. So let's have a look at some of the figures you can get, so I can give you an idea as to what I mean. Let's use an example with some nice round numbers to best show this off. For argument's sake, let's say a single shot from the M1000 classic rifle does 100 points of damage per shot. With a 100% base global damage and a crit damage multiplier of plus 150%, this crit shot comes out at 250 points of damage, leading to damage stats of either 100 on a non-crit or 250 on a crit shot. By equipping the Squint EEs, this changes our damage formula slightly, taking our global to 70% and the crit damage to plus 250% instead, making the standard shot do 70 points of damage due to the 30% damage loss, but the crit comes out at 245 points of damage, resulting in a damage loss either way you spin it. Now, fortunately, the artifact does get better the higher your global damage modifier increases, with only a 105% global damage number needed for the Squint EEs crit to be on par with the original. So anything higher than 105% means that crits will start to do more damage, with 150% global damage, for example, being an extra 45 points on damage on what the base crit would have been. Now, of course, this equation is pretty basic for what is happening in game, as additional factors need to be included with individual weapons, having damage increases, crit multipliers being messed with, and other specializations further increasing and decreasing as you level up your equipment. Now, this was just supposed to be an example to help understand how the gadget works and when you'll see returns when investing, with mid to end level fights being the most beneficial. To maximise the damage increases from the Squint EEs, there are a couple of routes you can take, with global damage increases being the simplest to access from level ups and the buy menu after completing a stage. Other routes involve maxing out crit chance to have consistent critical numbers across the screen, done by either selecting and buying upgrades into crit chance, or from combining with the number 4 on this list, the Nitra Powder, offering a huge increase to crit chance, easily able to take you over the 100% crit chance threshold. Now, while the Squint EEs aren't essential into making a build work in the latter stages, it is a very powerful artifact to use when a build is nearing its apex and can take a good build into an insane amount of DPS potential. It also really benefits from the number 1 artifact picked on this list, so why don't we have a look into this one now. And at the number 1 spot, the most influential artifact that makes me girly scream internally every time I see it and gets instant locked regardless of what the other 2 options are when it drops, we have the Pickled Nitra. Who would have thought a glass jar of Nitra in brine would have such an effect on DPS? For the low cost of dealing over 1,337 damage in a single attack, the Pickled Nitra becomes unlocked, granting plus 2% global damage per Nitra on your miner, and the cost of minus 0.5% move speed per Nitra as well, turning you into a slow DPS cannon the more Nitra that you mine and extract. For 50 pieces of Nitra, you're now seeing a 100% increase to damage on your gadgets at the cost of 25% movement speed. And yes, I know exactly what you're thinking, this damage increase does work wonders with a crit build when you combine it with the Squint EEs and the powder, with the powder working off each piece of Nitra you have anyways, essentially double dipping into base damage and crit chance for doing this exact same job, which in turn increases the damage of the crit while also increasing the likelihood of those crits landing. The Pickled Nitra really does make all builds and gadgets viable in this game, offering such an overpowered increase that it can take the challenge out of the levels. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, as that decrease to movement speed can be a killer, most notably against behemoths. Now, these end level bosses really do pack a punch and can move around quickly with their leap attacks, dealing heavy damage if not evaded. This is where the balance of damage to movement speed comes in, with enough movement speed needed to still move out of the way of the dash, but enough damage in your pocket to melt away the boss and any swarms that are nearby. Depending on my boost to movement speed from level up rewards, I tend to find around about 30 to 45 Nitra is the base sweet spot, giving me enough to dodge what I need to, but this can go higher if I do grab a couple of movement buffs here and there. Pushing closer to 80 to 100 Nitra though essentially roots you in place, making you a DPS machine, but can mean no movement for behemoths if in case they come your way, or worse yet, not being fast enough to get to the dropship to extract from a level, resulting in that fail. Downsides included, the Pickled Nitra really is the best sustained boosted damage in Deep Rock Galactic Survivor that you can find, so go out there, get it unlocked as fast as you can, and start enjoying the boost it provides. And that wraps it up on my list of the top 5 artifacts in this game, but this is where I want to be able to hear from you in the comment section down below. Do you think that I got this list right? Do you think I've missed any important ones out? And what do you feel about the pay to win console? Is it in a good place? Let me know all of that and more down below. As for the future of this game on the channel, between looking at some big title launches like Last Epoch, I'll be looking into making some builds to work towards on this game, talking what gadgets are great and ones to avoid for each subclass in Survivor, so if that sounds like something worthwhile to you, I'd greatly appreciate the like and subscribe to the channel to let me know that that's what you want. With all that said and done though, that just leaves me to say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.